Ben Greensmith of Tony's Chocolonely. Welcome back to Brand Growth Heroes.
Thanks very much for having me back. I think it must be, well, we were just saying it's 4 or 5 years now.
It
So
is.
yeah, great to
It
see you
is.
again and great to be back.
And I can't believe the progress that you guys have made in that time, not just for, Tony's sales in the UK, but more importantly for the impact that you're making across the cocoa industry. Let's dive straight into it. Where have you guys got to over the last 4 years? You just, I think, launched into Sainsbury's, so you were starting to get a little bit more mass market the last time we spoke. And since then, you're now completely mass market, right?
Yeah, so we are in the last kind of 4 years. We've now rolled out into all of the major grocery customers. So if you pop to do your grocery shopping now, you'll find us in all stores, and you will. In all of those stores, you'll find at least a full shelf of Tony's, which is great. And I think in the ones that we've been with for the longest, so Sainsbury's and Waitrose, you'll find two shelves, which is pretty incredible. So we've also launched multiple ranges. We now, so it's not just bars. I think back then we were just talking about bars. We've now we have seven, probably 10 bars in the UK that constitutes our core range. We've got pouches, we've got a giant Easter egg, an advent calendar, which caused a bit of a stir a
It
few years
did.
ago. And we are just in bars alone. We are already, we're the fourth biggest chocolate bar brand in the UK. And we account for over 4% market share. We overtook Green and Blacks, which was a bit of a milestone for us last year, about a year ago now.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah, they've been going since 1991.
Yeah.
So we're making inroads. We've still got a long way to go. We've just closed our books on our financial year in the UK, and our turnover was about 40 million. But if you think the chocolate industry is well over $100 billion, we've got a long way to go. And I think when I was talking to you as well, I think we accounted for globally about 0.1% of all of the cocoa coming out of West Africa. Now globally, we're kind of 10 times that. We're up to 1%,
That's
and
amazing.
that's both Tony's, but also Tony's Open Chain, which I know we'll probably talk
We
about.
will. We will. So just to understand, you are the fourth biggest chocolate bar company,
Brand,
brand, sorry,
yeah.
brand, but only 4% market share. If you were, what would your market share in bars be then? It would obviously be bigger than the 4%, right?
No, that is bars. That is bars. So with 4% share of bars, fourth biggest bar brand in the UK. Total chocolate, I think we're 1.5% of
So
total chocolate.
what share of bars do the first three brands have then?
So now, this is the harder part now. So we've got above us, we have Galaxy, Lindt, and Cadbury's. So Cadbury's start over 30% market share, which is insane.
Okay, that's why I asked the question. The reason I asked the question was because I thought, no, that I'm obviously missing the point. Maybe they're 4% of all chocolate, and
No.
they've obviously got a much bigger share of bars if they're number four in bars. So a really skewed market. So it's a really good place, I think, for us to dive straight into open chain and the change that you're trying to make in the industry. And we can always loop back then into all of the amazing, fun brand stuff that you're doing. The chocolate industry, the cocoa industry and the chocolate industry is skewed towards some really big players, and you're trying to make a change in that industry, doing something incredibly different and interesting. Will you take us through Open Chain, how it works?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I'll start with the problem in cocoa, and I don't know how many of your listeners will know about it, but it's most of the cocoa in the world, so nearly 2/3 comes from two countries, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire in West Africa.
Hmm.
You have 2.5 million farms there, typically smallholder farms and operations, a couple of, the size of one or two football pitches. Most of the world's cocoa actually is it's controlled by, I'd say, probably two handfuls of big companies. So you have the big brand owners, Mars, Nestle, Lindt, Ferrero, Hershey, and then you have the big chocolate producers, and they keep the price of cocoa as low as possible so they can make as much money. So in West Africa, that leads to big structural problems, and as a result of the low prices paid to the farmers from these big producers, most of them are living in poverty, and as a result of that, there are 1.6 million children working illegally on cocoa farms today, and that's because the farmers can't afford to. They
Pay
basically have
people.
to take and they have to take their children out of school and use them on their farms, and we don't think that's right. So Tony's has been going now for nearly 2 decades, and we want to show that there's a different way to make chocolate that doesn't involve exploitation. Which we have our 5 sourcing principles, and one of those is paying farmers fairly. I mean, I can go into them if you want. We also have fully traceable supply chain. But cutting to your question,
Hmm.
what we do and what we want to do, because we're never going to get to 100% market share as Tony's. What we do is we say to other chocolate companies, look, this is what we've been doing for 2 decades. These are our 5 sourcing principles. We will help you to source sustainably so you can copy us, and we will facilitate you to copy what we've learned over the last 2 decades, and ultimately that's how we will make impact together. So there's two elements to Tony's. One is the Tony's brand that you see in store, the bright red wrappers, the 2 shelves that I've been talking about in all those great retail partners that we have, and the other is basically getting more people and more companies, big and small, who source cocoa to adopt our 5 sourcing principles, and that's how we can really make change and get scale. And what has been great is since I last spoke to you, I think maybe we had 4 or 5 mission allies. We're now up to 20 mission allies, which means that we can make far more impact. And you know, these are
You got Aldi, Co-op, haven't you? Who else have you got?
we got Aldi, Albert Heijn,
Albert Heijn, yeah.
which is obviously the biggest retailer in the Netherlands. And what is really great is that last month they've announced that they are going to be moving. Originally, back in I think 2019, they had the Delicata range, which was part of their own label range, but it's been going so well for them, and they can see the impact that they're making. That they're now moving all of their own label cocoa sourcing to Tony's. So for every little ingredient that goes into anything that they source will be coming through Tony's open chain, which is insane.
And does that mean they're getting their cocoa from you, or they're using the same principles?
The same principles, and we're facilitating that. Waitrose as well
Wow.
are
Well done, Waitrose.
yeah, last year now. Well, actually, it was last year that we signed the contract, but actually they moved the product to Tony's Open Chain this year. And the great news is that that's actually not only it's grown their sales as well. So it seems that the Waitrose shoppers understand it, which is brilliant. Ben and Jerry's another big name, and then most recently Feastables.
Okay.
So Mr. Beast, big US YouTube sensation, is coming on board. And this is great because what it means is that we have more volume coming through Tony's open chain. It means we help more farmers. It means we're raising awareness because ultimately there's this little yellow Tony's open chain button, which you'll see across more and more packs. So that's been phenomenal.
And so, in terms of your impact, so if you're 4% of UK chocolate bars, but in terms of all of the chocolate that is now going through Tony's open chain and making an impact, that's going to be bigger than that 4%, obviously, because it's you plus other people.
Yeah, I mean 4%. So we're 4% is our UK share of bars. As I said, 4 years ago when we were talking, we accounted for Tony's and Tony's Open Chain accounted for about 0.1% of all of the cocoa
Yeah.
coming out of West Africa.
And now it's
We
1%.
Now it's 1%. We have an aim and a plan over the next 2 years by 2027, and I think based on what I've just told you, we will smash that to get to 2.5%. And then 5% 2 years later, and ultimately 10%. And if we can get to 10%, then that is really credible because that is roughly the same amount of volume that one of those big chocolate companies are putting through.
Okay.
So ultimately, what we need to do is demonstrate that this business model and this model that we've built can be scaled, and we're doing that, but also that it can be scaled profitably as well, because we have to show those big chocolate companies, which are commercial organizations. And don't get me wrong, we are a commercial organization as well. We're not a charity or an NGO. We have to show that we can do this. It's scalable and it can be profitable as well.
Was there a point in time when the idea of Tony's open chain, bringing it out to other people, making it open to other, what we would have seen in the past as competitors, but now collaborators, Was there a moment when it said, "Okay, well, let's just invite we can't do this on our own, let's invite others to join us on this journey," or was that always the idea from the beginning?
No, I think it's evolved. I think it was only 2017 where we got to the stage where we're like, look, if we're really going to make impact, the way to do it is to open it up. And I think, if I'm brutally honest as well, we didn't quite know at that stage how we're going to do it. We've just learned as we've built the business.
Okay.
So we've adapted, we've worked on it. As we've onboarded more mission allies, we've refined it, and the more we grow, the more we can scale it, the more affordable we can make it as well. So it is this. It it is something that the more momentum we can put behind it, it just
And
continues to
and it's a
build.
different business now, isn't it? Because I saw that it used to be on your website, years ago, but now they've got their own website, the Open Chain. And is it a different team?
Yeah, totally different team. To all it, we are now Tony's are now a customer of Tony's Open Chain as well. So
Okay.
we are kind of two very separate entities and run separately.
The reason I'm highlighting this is because yesterday, this is going to sound like a totally weird thing to bring up, but yesterday I brought my kids to Moana 2 because my littlest girl is 5 and my son is 8, and they all love Moana. Even my 14-year-old couldn't make it, but it's kind of like a family film they'll watch together. And Moana 2, as I was watching it, it's all about if you get lost and you can't find the way, there's always a different way. I know that all of the founders out there are struggling to scale business, and a lot of those businesses these days are built from a desire to try and do things differently in the world. And it's very difficult as a founder scaling a small to medium sized business to make an impact in a world where, I'm thinking of Laura at Seep, who won silver at the Future Food last week. She's in cleaning products, sustainable cleaning products. There's a lot to learn from a model like yours where you actually say, and I'm not saying this for a second, Laura, if you're listening, I'm not saying for a second that this is the case for you, but there's a lot to say, well, shouldn't we all do this if we're trying to? It's very difficult to make an impact as a small brand, and almost leading into that and saying, how we're doing this, can we invite others to come with us on the journey? And rather than thinking about competitors, thinking about collaborators. Do you not think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it is. It's also it's the weird one, really, because in a way it's our kind of IP, but ultimately, and this is the thing about Tony's that makes us slightly unique. So I'm not coming at this from a naive place, but we started 2 decades ago with the sole aim of solving a problem that shouldn't be there, which is issues with forced labor and child labor in cocoa chains in West Africa. And we've built a kind of commercial model behind that. So, but I do think that this can be inspiration for loads of other industries if and when, and we will show that this can work, and we are showing it can work. So yeah, because I think there are pockets of it. I think but there's just not enough of it in terms of knowledge sharing across industries to make the world a better place.
I used you guys as an example a couple of years ago. I did a talk for an organization in Austria, and it was like the barcode organization over there. And what I came up with was this idea of using your purpose as the architecture of your business model. And I think that's what you guys have done. Your purpose has designed a totally different business model rather than the standard business model that we all just like, oh, there we go. We're going to make a product and then we're going to push it by ourselves and we're going to try and sell it on Amazon and we're going to try and use Google Ads and Facebook and Instagram. And you guys are doing it totally differently, but it's totally designed by your purpose, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the interesting thing that we have to try and do is, and this is where we come in for, challenge and criticism, is that we need to build it in a way that ultimately those big chocolate companies can adopt our principles. We can't afford to be niche
No.
or deviate from broadly the way that they source or operate, because ultimately then we move away from being able to have that impact and scale. So it's this, we're in this kind of like funny territory where we need to take the model that they're using and show that actually there are deviations and movements you can make within that ultimately lead to a much, much better place for the people at the beginning of the value chain who need it most. So it is an adaptation of what's out there, but just we're totally rewriting it as well. And if you look at the choices we're having to make as a business, typically, and we publish all of this each and every year, we're spending 6 to 7% of our net revenue on impact costs, which include premiums, ultimately going back to the farmers that enable them to earn more money. I reckon the big chocolate companies spend between 0.5 and 1%, which is
It's
it's insane,
unbelievable.
right? Because
Yeah.
if you think about the choice they're then making to spend on big, flashy, sexy marketing campaigns.
So you've been leading this business in the UK from the beginning, and you've built a really strong team around you. I was delighted to hear you've got, a senior leadership team that has 5 of you and 3 of whom are very strong women. That's wonderful. How do you guys balance the fun and the cheeky impact that Tony's has on shelf and in the psyche of UK consumers who are aware of them, and the playfulness and the kind of slight jabbing to the big players in the market, with all of the other things that you need to balance, such as, the rise in cocoa prices and the fact that potentially people want chocolate that tastes great and they mightn't necessarily link ethical chocolate to chocolate that tastes great. And you've got so many things that you need to balance. How do you do that?
That's a great question. This has been one of the, 6.5 years in that we're still kind of learning and adapting. I think firstly, one of our values is makes you smile. That's really important because we've got a very difficult message to give. And actually we know, and we've learned that taking that message too seriously can really turn people off and alienate people. So there is a real balance in terms of getting that message across. And that's why I think you said cheeky, kind of fun. That is why we are a little bit tongue in cheek in our
Did you
communication.
see, sorry, just on that, did you see Byron Sharp a couple of years ago reposted, some consultant had made a post on LinkedIn about your Christmas advent calendar not having one chocolate because sometimes life's unfair. And I thought that was just bloody brilliant. Great execution of, the fact that you have differently sized squares or pieces in your chocolate bars, which has been widely copied now, or starting to be widely copied, which I think is totally unfair. But anyway, back to the advent calendar. So this marketing consultant shared the fact that you had got too big for your boots and preachy, apparently. But I can't remember what else he said. And then Byron Sharp shared this guy's post and said, "This is what happens when challenger brands become too." And so I wrote in the comments, I wrote, "Byron Sharp," or tagged him, "Are you talking about Tony's or this marketing consultant?" Who's getting too big for their boots. He didn't answer, obviously, because why would he? But I thought, for God's sake, these guys they're going out there with this advent calendar, they're creating discussion and they're creating strong emotions and a strong emotional reaction, even if that's in the family home, in order to make a point. And it's a really good point. And certainly in our family, when there was a chocolate missing, yes, it was a difficult conversation, but it was one that as parents is really worth having with your kids. So thank you for that. Do you get lots of bad, negative, kind of sarky? How did you learn? My question more is this. You said that you have learned that people don't want to hear that stuff, or they don't want to hear the bad stuff. Have you had feedback that, we don't want to hear all that sad, bad stuff about what goes on in Africa?
No, I think it's more, if we go back to our mission and making impact and helping as many farmers as quickly as possible, it's a balance, right? I think what we have learned is on tailoring our messaging. So I think one thing that we do know is that actually people associate ethical produce and ethical chocolate with poor taste. What we know is, and we taste bloody delicious. So we're having to dial up the taste cues to get people to try Tony's for the first time, particularly as we're at a premium. So that is, in terms of our messaging and some of our copy and our a campaign that's live at the moment, it's going to be focused on making sure that people understand that, look, if you're going to buy Tony's, it tastes bloody amazing. And then actually you're going to open it, you're going to say, why is it unequally divided? And then you can read the wrapper and, oh, by the way, it's also bloody great. It's much better that it's showing that there's a different way to make chocolate. So it's probably around tailoring our messaging, but we also, I think I've probably learned to be a little bit thicker skinned over the years. I think we did launch that advent calendar and we took a chocolate out, but we actually put 2 the next day and then we put 2 on day 24. So you were getting more chocolate anyway. But the learning on that was that we probably didn't signpost it enough. So people opened it and like, there's a chocolate missing. This is, this is terrible. So we were inundated with complaints. When we have people's attention and they, I think we over had in that first year over 2,000 people contact us. It got picked up by the BBC. It was on. I was watching Have I Got News for You, and they're talking about Tony's advent calendar, which so there was definitely some learnings there. But in terms of helping us to raise awareness of the mission and speak directly to those 2,000 people that contacted us, but also the column inches we got off the back of it, that was invaluable. At the time, it was Christ, we maybe should have done this slightly differently, and we've taken those learnings and we've now signposted it, and actually you get to the day before, and then none the next day. So it's you soften the blow a little bit, but it's just learning and adapting over the time. And I think also when you are putting yourself out there as well, you do see that it makes interesting headlines for people to have a go at you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's been all sorts of other interesting headlines about colours of wrappers you've used. And I remember buying your chocolate when it looked potentially like other big chocolate brands. And I loved that one. I bought the one that looked like a Toblerone. Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, we are. So we did this in the UK. This is called the Sweet Solutions campaign, and I think it's probably one of the favorite things I think we've done, because it was that balance of it was quite cheeky, but often the big chocolate companies are saying we can't do what you do. It's quite complicated. So we actually said, look, we'll create your bars in our wrappers using our chocolate, and so that's what we did. And actually, we launched it in a major UK retailer, but it got pulled off the shelf after a day. But it was again, it was never for us. This wasn't about this wasn't about selling chocolate bars or driving sales, but it was about raising awareness, and it did just that because of the reaction. Um,
And
so
it was
yeah,
bloody brilliant. I saw it. It made me smile, and I wanted to buy it because I like, it's nice to be able to get the other chocolate that you like, but somebody's take on it. It's a bit like a chef doing a collaboration, or an artist doing a cover song.
yeah, and there's an element of scarcity as well, because it was only, I think we had 25,000 bars or something that it's going back so long now. But we've recently this year, 6 months ago, did this same campaign in Germany, but with slightly different bars, and one of them was purple. And yeah, there was a lawsuit filed against us on that, not because of the association with child labour, but because of the fact that we were using a certain colour
I
purple.
have to say
So
that really disgusts me, and I'm allowed to say that you're not. But I mean, could you not, in the context where somebody's using your color, and whose color is their color really, but they're using your color change to drive awareness and change the world for good. Could you not turn a blind eye?
yeah, well, we off the back of it, we had a mini campaign off the back of it, which was pay farmers, not lawyers.
Oh yeah, I loved that. That was amazing. So as any company grows, you move into the mass market, you start targeting more people who potentially are more difficult to convert because they are just buying chocolate for different reasons, and they're maybe less into thinking about what they buy. I don't know. It becomes more difficult to acquire customers over time, doesn't it? Do you do TV? What are you doing? What are you going to do to get that next big tranche of mass market consumers?
Yeah, I think we're definitely coming to that stage now. I think and it's increasingly hard as well, because cocoa pricing has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
So the chocolate in the stores is becoming more expensive, and there's a scarcity of cocoa. So I mean, on the face of it, that could be good if some of that money starts going back to the farmers who need it most. But at the moment, it's not.
Mm.
But hopefully, some of that will start to stick. But I think our big challenge in that, with that backdrop, is going to be how can we continue to bring people into the brand, to show them there is a different way of experiencing delicious chocolate, and a fairer alternative, and that does become increasingly hard. One of the focus that we're going to have is just making sure that people, because chocolate's a treat. You eat chocolate because you want a treat, you want to pick me up. on a Saturday night or as a gift to someone. And actually, people need to know that Tony's is the best tasting chocolate out there. And so a big focus for us is going to be on driving that message home. And we would have to be doing it by because we don't have the big marketing budgets. So we're definitely not going to be on TV. You're not going to see us on TV or spending, heaps of money on campaigns. But it's how can we make sure that we continue in an affordable way for the business to get Tony's into more people's hands so they can experience it for the first time. We have some really compelling data that shows that our advocacy, loyalty, 82% of people that try Tony's will come back and buy it again and again. So our biggest challenge is making sure that people try Tony's. And the good news is, since I last spoke to you, we have different formats available. So different ways for people to experience Tony's throughout different parts of the day. Smaller bars, 2 different smaller bars, pouches, Advent, Easter. So the opportunity for people to experience Tony's is there.
What
It's the
about
big,
out of home? I mean, that's one place I would love to see you more, but that might be just because I live in the sticks, as we'd say. But, I'd love to be when I go to Costa or to, an independent coffee shop to be able to buy a little Tony's to go with my chocolate, even if it was one of the minis.
Yeah. No, it's we have an out of home team here. So my team now is, I think, with 32,
Wow.
and probably half of that is sales, and a big focus for us is out of home. It's how we built the brand in the UK back in the early days when we had a couple of big retailers in there, but the big focus for us was out of home, and that has been through a mixture of wholesale, food service, but and high street and travel and convenience stores as well. But a big focus for us is going to be anywhere that you want to, that you're having fun or enjoying yourself or eating nice food. Tony should be there.
Okay, and talk to us about that then. So around half of your team is sales. So I can I speak to so many scaling brands who are thinking, how many people do I really need in my sales team? So do you mind talking us through how that's structured and like who covers what?
Yeah, I mean, broadly, my team is split. The sales team we have split broadly into 2 areas, or 3 areas actually. Grocery, which are the big customers, and we're with all of the big guys and girls, so Asda, Morrison's, Tesco's, Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Ocado.
And do you have an account manager for each of those accounts, or do you have account managers that span, more
We
than one account?
a bit of both.
Bit of both, yeah.
And then we have an out of home team, which is wholesale is currently our biggest channel that sits outside of grocery. But that again is where we built and seeded the business. We have high street travel, we have convenience, and we have food service team. And that food service team has kind of one head and then 2 execs who will go out and help to activate and bring the brand to life out there as well. We then have a really important element, which is personalized bars, which is pretty unique. But that has been more than doubling year on year.
Wow. Okay.
And this is, you go online, you can stick your face on a bar and you can send it to a mate for their birthday or whatever. But also, if you're a business, you can go online, you can order thousands of bars with your logo on it as for any event that you've got. And that is absolutely huge. And
I had no idea. I thought that was like a one-off marketing campaign. That's actually a part of your business.
it is, and because it's so unique, because we have paper packaging. I'll show you actually. Look, you can.
Oh yeah, all over the wall. Wow, they're brilliant. Their wall, they've got all these amazing branded Tonys on their wall.
It is absolutely massive. I mean, this year it will account for nearly 10% of our UK revenue.
Oh my God.
Which and most of that is business to business. So
So there is a different way. There you go again. You're not doing it the same way as everyone would expect you to do it.
And but also, like, everyone loves chocolate, right? You don't want to. Do you want a pen with, I don't know, your logo on it, or actually when someone's coming back to work or whatever it is, or you're at an event, having a bar of chocolate that's got your branding on it is delicious, and it's so powerful as well. So we know that is pretty unique at the moment. But that's a big challenge for us as well, is that awareness piece. How do we get awareness of this? Because most people aren't aware that Tony's does this and has this service. And
So is your brand on that then as well?
it's just on the side, but you can personalize it. It's entirely up to you what you put on it. You can take it off, you can leave it on.
So you're not being precious and saying, no, it has to have Tony's logo in this corner like the big guys would do. So
No.
it could be totally just like, it could be totally Ford
Yeah,
and no other brand on it.
exactly.
So what's in it for you then?
It's the shareability. Once you open the bar, you know it's Tony's because it says Tony's Chocolonely in it.
Right.
And also it just means that we can make even more impact. So we're selling more chocolate, we're selling more cocoa, we're helping more farmers in West Africa.
You see, this is great. Again, that the purpose is leading the business design rather than, oh, we've got to grow our brand at all cost. It's about the impact you're making. I love it. It's freeing your thinking.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And some of the decisions that we've made over the years, like 2 years ago, I took the decision when everyone else was putting their prices up in the UK to put our price down because it meant we just cut our P&L slightly differently, but it enabled us to come below £3 for the first time, and we saw our rate of sale grow by 40%. And we also doubled our distribution in grocery because the impact that they were seeing was, it just meant that we had many more people picking up Tony's for the first time and experiencing us and trying it. It meant that we could then double our penetration and show people that there is this solution. But if you're a typical business that was governed by trying to make as much money as possible for shareholders, you wouldn't necessarily have made that decision.
So you're putting, what did you say, 5 to 6% of your revenue 6 to 7% of your revenue into impact, and I'm assuming that means that your EBITDA takes a real hit. So does that mean that it is okay for the people that own your business? It's okay that it is not making loads of profit every year.
Yeah, I mean, it is a choice. I think what we have to demonstrate is in the future that actually we can drive scale and we can grow, but we can make money and we can make EBIT. We don't need to make as much EBIT as the big chocolate companies. We don't have the efficiencies that they have, but we need to demonstrate at some point. If we're going to prove that this model, which we will, how we'll prove that this model works is by combining that scale and showing that it can be profitable at the same time. So it is definitely a balance, because what we can't have is fast forward 2 to 3 years where we've got this massive scale and this year we turned over 200 million euros. Next year we another 25% on top of that. What we can't have is a business that's turning over 500 million but not making any money, because the big chocolate companies will look at that and go, yeah, but that's great, but you're not making any profit. So it's not a sustainable model.
Okay. So it's not for you that you have to make the profit, or it's not for your shareholders or your owners that you have to make the profit. It's to show Big Choc that they can make money and do this.
Yeah. And if that's, 5-10%, half of what they're making, which is about 20% in some cases, then, we think that that's enough, because actually, as I say, there's, with their scale and their buying power, there's a lot more to be added to that.
Somebody said to me yesterday, oh, yeah, they got bought by Barry Callebaut. And I said, I don't think they did. And then
No,
I
you
had to
didn't.
madly Google it. I was like, I don't think they got bought by Barry Callebaut. I think they used Barry Callebaut. I don't think they got bought by Barry Callebaut. You didn't get bought by Barry Callebaut, did you?
No, we didn't. No, we've always used Barry Callebaut, and the reason, and this goes back to my point earlier, the reason we use Barry Callebaut is because they are one of the big processors that the big chocolate companies use. So again, to have a scalable solution, we have to follow a similar path to them. It just so happens that we have a fully segregated supply chain within Barry Callebaut, so separate tanks, separate lines that enable us to have full traceability. So again, it's about taking the model that works and then adapting it. But this is the thing, like, you go online, even on our latest campaign, and there's so much information and misinformation out there.
So if people want to check out your latest campaign, it's an outdoor campaign. Yeah, give us a little bit of an overview on what it's focusing on and why, and then we'll let people point them in the direction of checking it out so they can learn more.
It's all about breaking the mold and showing that Tony's does things differently. And in this case, in the latest outdoor campaign, it's about our name, the lonely element. A lot of people just think we're Tony's Chocolonely, not lonely, and there's an L in it. And the reason that there's an L in it is because when we started 2 decades ago, it was just Tony, the journalist, and his lonely battle to change the chocolate industry. It just so happens now we've got a lot more mission allies alongside us. So that is the fundamental thrust of the kind of overarching brand platform, if you like, which is we do things differently. And this element is on the naming, but it's going to be also reinforced massively by our fantastic taste credentials as well, and getting people to try Tony's. So giving them a reason to talk about us, and then also try Tony's and pick us up.
Well, it's nearly Christmas and everyone's going to be thinking about stocking fillers, and they're going to be thinking about gifts for people who popped the door that you weren't expecting. I'm asking everyone listening to this to buy some Tonys and put it in your cupboard. So when somebody, actually, I think we said this about 4 years ago, that I had a big stack of them in my cupboard for birthday presents that I'd forgotten, birthdays that I'd forgotten. It's bloody brilliant. As long as you've got a whole load of bars of Tonys in your house, you're never stuck for a gift when you go to someone's house or when someone calls the door. But listen, if you're listening to this, go and buy some Tonys as gifts because it'll make a difference, right?
Yeah, here. I 100%. And, it tastes great as well. So
Oh, yeah. I mean,
win-win.
win-win. It tastes blooming amazing. What's your personal favourite, Ben?
Always been caramel and sea salt, which is our bestseller by a country mile. It's probably accounts every single market. It is our bestseller. It's the orange bar, so there's something in that. But the close second is our everything bar, which basically you kind of got to think of as Tony's greatest hits. It's got all of the best sellers in there: pretzel, caramel, sea salt. Yeah, it's delicious.
Yum. I'd like to see a Tony's McFlurry. That would be good.
Yeah, we'd be up for that.
Yeah, some Tony's topping on a McFlurry. That would be good. Or a Tony's Frappuccino.
Yes, again, yeah, I think.
Or a Tony's hot chocolate in Starbucks. I would like to have a Tony's hot chocolate in Starbucks. I don't buy hot chocolate, but I think I would buy it if it was Tony's.
Yeah. Well, this is the bit. One of the challenges we get a lot is like we have a lot of people coming to us saying, "Can we use your brand? Can we do variations that involve cocoa?" But actually, again, going back to our mission, what keeps us really focused is we're all about as much chocolate as possible and as much cocoa as possible. So anything kind of that dilutes that is not a focus for us.
Except, though, if you're getting your brand and your mission in front of people, no?
There is a balance. There is a
Yeah.
balance.
I mean, seriously, like on a day like today, sitting at the airport, you'd like a nice Tony's Chocolonely hot chocolate with
Yeah.
with with some kind of crazy Tony's straw that I could suck it through.
Yeah.
That would
There's
be
actually
yum.
there's quite a cool part. I can't tell you much more, but there's a cool partnership which is going to really reinforce our taste credentials coming up
Ooh.
in about February to look out for, that Lucy and our team has been working really hard on, that I think is going to be super, super exciting.
Well, I look forward to that. And I am going to go on my way home now and stop and buy a load of Tony's for the Christmas presents. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. We will have you back again in another year or so because it was too long. And hear how you've been doing. You're great, Ben, and thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.